All right, I am just going to share my screens and we are going to dive into how you can invest in your health today and really use functional lab testing, use metabolism testing, genetics, whatever data you can collect to work with a practitioner that's experienced to help figure out what is best for you to do today. So you're in your prime when you're 70, 80 years old. Now, we've been talking about what does health optimization look like? And I'm going to minimize my screen so I'm not in the way all the time. Fueling your body with personalized nutrition, learning how to train smarter, not harder, reducing external stressors, but identifying our hidden sources of internal chronic stress that are contributing to metabolic chaos, chronic inflammation, leaky gut. While we want to support our liver detox pathways, our digestion, working north, working our way south, and cellular renewal, getting the garbage taken out and bring in some new healthy functioning cells. So if you are struggling with weight gain that's unexplained, you're doing all the right things, you just can't figure out what is going on, or you're doing everything you think's right, but you still feel off. You don't have the energy, the vibrance, the vitality that you used to. You don't feel as resilient. Maybe you don't feel any issues and you are totally fine, but you just are curious what is going on under the hood to investigate what you should do so you are preventative. The main goal I want to get across is that we should not be waiting until we are struggling. Let's be health optimizers and figure out what to do to be ideally thriving when we're older. So if you have maybe some signs and symptoms that you're struggling with that can correlate with metabolic health dysfunction, if you feel sluggish, you can't lose weight, your energy level fluctuates throughout the day, your hormones feel off, you're hungry, you have no energy, you're burned out, and you feel just you're aging really fast. So we want to wake up with energy. We want to burn fat easily. It should be not so much of a struggle. Your workouts are productive, not exhausting. Your sleep quality is amazing. You get to sleep and you fall asleep and you have restorative sleep. So if we want to improve how we age, let's work on all these markers now. So we want to focus on mitochondria, as metabolic dysfunction is caused when our cells' ability to produce energy and other substances our body needs to operate effectively is compromised. The organelles responsible for these functions are the mitochondria. So you can see mitochondria play so many roles in our body. When the mitochondria that creates energy, ATP, we have energy, the focus of fat burning, the resilience that we're talking about that we want to make sure we don't lose as we age. But the function of our cells declines as we age with excess chronic stress, with poor lifestyle habits. And this is where I feel that most people experience fatigue, burnout, slow recovery, brain fog, muscle loss, weight gain, all the stuff we keep talking about, and accept that as a normal part of aging. This is what is going to happen, we are taught, as we age. My goal and mission is to help avoid this because it's choosing to accept this is how it's going to be instead of taking ownership for our future selves by understanding what changes as we age and that we need to do things differently to make up for that lack of cell resiliency. Why do things happen and figure that out? What are the missing ingredients? When our mitochondria are thriving, we just feel better. So shouldn't we focus our energy on keeping our mitochondria healthy and working at full capacity? Because if you look at how many mitochondria are in our body, heart muscle, skeletal muscle, this is per cell. So if we have 5,000 to 8,000 mitochondria per cell, is what I think this is saying, kidneys, liver, skin, there's a lot of mitochondria in our body. And if we break it down, estimated per cell, 5,000 to 8,000 per cell, brain cells, I mean, just figure out how much that is in our entire body. So if we want to focus on longevity, the mitochondria in our heart, in our brain, are what we should also focus on improving, not just our muscles. And really working on increasing our mitochondria health as we age and identifying what we need to do today to improve that function. How do we test and not guess our mitochondria? We'll talk about me screen. You can look at my podcast on the YouTube channel with Dr. Patel, and looking at Pinoy metabolism testing, how we can really get a different viewpoint of how well your mitochondria are functioning based on your metabolism. If your metabolism is not doing well, that's a clue that you have poor mitochondrial function. That is a clue that you are going to have, if not already, accelerated aging. Because your mitochondria are the engines in every cell. When they slow down, so do you. So if we can improve your metabolism, this may be able to help your cognitive decline and neurodegeneration, reduce our risk of chronic diseases as diabetes, heart disease, cancer, while improving our body composition, decreasing fat, increasing lean body mass, and just being stronger, more vibrant, and thriving as we age. So with Pinoy metabolism testing, I'll show you a little bit more what we get. But when we put a face mask on, we're measuring the oxygen in, carbon dioxide out. We can see at a rest how many calories you need. Are you burning fat or carbohydrates? During an exercise test, what is your peak fat burning zone? What is the point where you switch from primarily fats to primarily carbohydrates? What is the best training zone for you for fat loss, endurance, and recovery, as well as looking at your VO2 max, or what I prefer to say is VO2 peak, a key measurement of performance and longevity. And then we can create personalization based on this data. How much resistance training versus interval training, cardio does your body need right now based on your markers and your intake forms and assessment? In a resting metabolic test, the calories you burn, but we can also look at what are you doing now? What's your typical meal plan? Are you eating enough or overeating? And are you eating enough protein? Are we activating muscle protein synthesis and mTOR to stimulate muscle growth that helps improve our metabolism? During an exercise test, active metabolism, I can do different protocols, slower or faster, to get your peak fat max, metabolic efficiency test as per Bob Seebehore's protocols that are 3 to 5 minute long. We're just taking you up to submax, or do we want to do a peak VO2 and see where you are? Ideally do that first, then do a fat max as a follow-up test. Are you training wrong? Are you doing too much time in zone 3 and not enough time at your peak fat max, and not enough time doing high, hard intervals, which most people do not go hard enough to call them zone 5 sprint training that helps, but we'll find out mitochondria. So we can identify how healthy are your mitochondria with the Pinoy test by looking at your peak VO2. It's a reflection of mitochondria density and oxygen utilization. How well do your mitochondria burn fat or oxidize fat? And do you have poor mitochondria performance, looking at metabolic efficiency score? And then if you have excessive carbon dioxide production, or you start to use more carbs early on, or low peak fat max, we might see that you have mitochondria stress and mitochondria inflexibility that we can touch on. So clues that we get from the analysis, not just your VO2 max, but it's also looking at your biological versus chronological age. How old you really are is about how good you are using oxygen. Identifying your 5 training zones. So we get more of a roadmap to how you should fuel, train, and perform each day. by based on what your body, how is it working now, not just generic guidelines that you get from online searches, podcasts, social media posts. What is key for us to learn, hopefully today, is personalization, that we're all unique. And if we don't just do a test and retest every few months, we are just guessing how to do everything. And you kind of get stuck in the cycle of trial and error and waste a lot of time and money trying to figure out what's best for you by experimenting for months, years, and not really understanding what's best for your body. So we want to look at how should we train as we age. As we want to build strength, we want to minimize sedentary time. We want to be more active, work on our sleep, our weight management, our stress management, and really working on avoiding joint back pain, falls, depression, cardiovascular disease, type 2 diabetes. So physical activity as we age is really important. And number one thing I feel that as I learn more is building strength at least 2 days a week. If it's going to the gym or if it's carrying heavy things, if it's doing body weights yoga, might not be enough to stimulate muscle protein health, but there's lots we can do. So when we do a metabolism test and then look at what we'll talk about some functional lab testing, how healthy are your mitochondria? Well, PNOE, we might see on the left side, if your fat max is low, you switch to carbohydrates really quickly in your exercise test. When we do organic acids test and or a me-screen mitochondria test, we can identify poor fat acid oxidation. And then we can learn, all right, what do we need to support? Do we need carnitine? Do you need to eat more meat? Do you need to work on fat adaptation, beta oxidation, and adjust your macronutrients? Maybe you're eating too many healthy carbs and you're not metabolically efficient and flexible. Now, on the PNOE test, if we see your low VO2 max for your height, weight, age, gender, on a mitochondria test, we can correlate that with your scores are lower and your Krebs intermediates that are on an organic acids test we call OATs. And that gives us clue, do we need more zone 2 peak fat max training? Do we need some VO2 max workouts? CoQ10, creatine, magnesium are supplements we can look at. And red light therapy we can talk about with Lumati and other devices as a flex beam and using Kineon. There's all sorts of different red light therapy that are good medical grade, but you want to make sure, again, we test and figure out what you need based on the results, not just, oh, I need this, I need that, and piecemeal it together. Poor metabolic efficiency on PNOE tests might be good to correlate on your oxidative stress markers on the OATs test. And then we can tell, do we need antioxidants? Do we need more glutathione precursors as NAC or glutathione, vitamin C, supporting our detox, phase 1, 2, and 3, the drainage. And then we look at your resting metabolic rate. Is it low? And what do we need to do differently? Target mitochondria biogenesis, creating support. Nutritional therapy would be PQQ, NAD, precursors, and work on strength training. And then there's sauna benefits. So again, these are examples, but we always want to create a personalized program for you. I think too many of us get stuck in listening to what's good and bad and try to put it together ourselves and not really know what we need. So I want to ask you, if you're trying to be fit and healthy from the inside out, what are your goals? Fat loss, body recomposition means fat loss, increased muscle, want to be leaner? Do you want to be faster? Are you just looking at performing your best in life? Metabolic health, longevity? Let me know. So if I divide up 3 categories, fat loss, performance, and longevity, when I do metabolism testing and do the analysis, looking at other data I collect in the intake forms, and if you do functional lab testing with me, we can really figure out what's going on. So this is a sample on the right side, a picture from a resting metabolic rate. We're looking at functions of your brain, lungs, heart, and cells when we do testing. Now, in the report for the RMR test, you're getting oxygen, sympathetic, parasympathetic activation from the heart rate variability breakdown. respiratory capacity, your lung utilization, ventilation efficiency, breathing coordination. Then we have heart rate variability, we're getting with the heart rate strap, and then metabolic rate, fat burn efficiency, and mitochondria function, and metabolic flexibility. So this is in the metabolic resting test that you're lying down doing nothing but trying to relax for 10-15 minutes. I feel this test is really important, but we want to do both the exercise and the resting test, especially if you're trying to lose weight. Now, how do we identify how much fuel from fat or carbohydrate are you using? When we have the mask on, you're measuring oxygen in, carbon dioxide out. We can analyze that and we can figure out your calories, fat, and carbohydrates with some calculations. How many calories a day? Your RER is the respiratory exchange ratio. That's the difference of the V volume of carbon dioxide to the oxygen, VO2. And then their carbs, 0.70 is fat, 0.85 is 50-50, fat and carbs, and then 100% carbs or more, your RQ value is 1.0. So we can calculate by measuring your oxygen and carbon dioxide. So from the testing, we can figure out your peak fat oxidation, your peak fat max, where your body burns the most fat during exercise. And we can identify the crossover point. And this would be your zone 2 we hear about. So in a test, here's a sample. Gold down to the bottom here is your fat being used. The red's the heart rate for the person. I like to do a really longer warm-up. The protocols are often 3 minutes. I just don't think that's enough. I know I need 10 minutes to warm up before I start increasing intensity, sometimes 20 minutes. So when I test people, I have them warm up for 10-15 minutes, maybe do some pickups, and then we do the actual test. And then the test itself is 3 minutes. And then the midsection here, you see we increase the intensity every 1 minute. But if I'm doing a fat max test, I might go 3 to 5 minutes and just stop when we get to 0.9 or 0.9190 for your RER. If we're doing a VO2 max test, we're going to take you up to when you say, okay, I'm done. And then we'll measure your recovery is over here. So this is the work. This is the warm up, the work, and then the warm down. Now, identifying your fat metabolism issues with PNOE, as I said, the resting metabolic rate, it tells us if your metabolism is slow, stressed, or sugar burner. Your AMR test shows your fat max, the crossover point, and metabolic efficiency. So if you're stuck in burning carbs during early low intensities, there's some clues that we need to figure out what else is going on. So if you feel that you're doing everything right, but you're not burning fat, we need to get a personalized program to restore your fat burning capacity, improve your metabolism, train smarter, and work on your eating and lifestyle habits to improve your fat metabolism. Metabolic flexibility is using that energy, food into energy versus inflexible, convert it into excess fat. But it's also metabolic flexibility is when you use whole nutrient dense whole foods, protein, healthy fats, balanced carbs from nature, fuel for your workout, body composition. But when you're not exercising, make sure you're using fat as your main fuel source. Carbs used for higher intensities, weight loss, healthy insulin sensitivity. So using a lumen, which you can save $100 with my code, this is a great device to do for metabolic flexibility day-to-day testing. So to improve metabolic flexibility, we can experiment with what you're eating, your macros, your stress levels, improve your fat burning with how you're exercising, and then improves muscle health too. So how do we know if you need to focus on more fat burning or improving muscle health, which increases your metabolism? So what really I'm looking at is fat burning. Do I need to speed up my fat oxidation rate? Or does the test tell me I need to focus on increasing lean body mass? Or is it both? So AMPK pathway helps mitochondria fat oxidation. And then mTOR is helping grow muscle protein synthesis, muscle protein synthesis. Now, we can tell that from the test if we need more AMPK activation, that's going to be a clue that we need to improve fat burning. We need to work on your cellular cleanup, autophagy, and mitochondrial repair and longevity signaling. mTOR is more growth and it drives muscle building, recovery, cellular regeneration. So the goal is to balance that teeter-totter between AMPK and mTOR to avoid metabolic dysfunction in order to build more resiliency and promote healthy aging. So we can identify based on the test and looking at your lab work too, what do we need to focus on a little bit more than the other? In the PNOE test, if I see you need more fat loss, your muscle gain, maybe longevity, metabolic flexibility, your training focus, your nutrition, and your lifestyle routine might be slightly different. So we need to identify where your areas of opportunity, correlate that with your current program and your goals, and what do we identify clues in your intake forms as well as your any other labs. So fat loss would be zone 2, and strength, maybe we do some sprint interval training, but that's going to activate AMPK. Early crossover point if you're not very efficient at burning fat. If we see you want to gain muscle, and maybe also I see your metabolism is really slow on the resting metabolism test, we need to add a little bit more strength and HIIT training, and then adjust your macros. And so you can see that as examples. Now, personalizing your nutrition, making sure you're eating enough protein forward meals to stimulate muscle, and then adding carbs in around the workout. Adjusting your macros, slower RMR, you need more calories, metabolic function, or maybe you need to work on being more metabolic flexible. Low intensity zone 2 days, you don't need as many carbohydrates. Then in days you're doing the high intensity or strength trains, you might add a little bit more carbs from nature and more protein focus. Well, protein focus every day. Now, if we're doing performance training, we can look at some different things. So let's pause and come back to the performance gain. So stand up, stretch, move around, and we'll get back. Diving next into performance gains. How do you improve athletic performance? Or perhaps you're just interested in improving performance in daily activities, climbing the stairs, carrying your groceries, getting up and down off the floor. These are essential areas of activities of daily life that we need to continue working on. It is true, I believe, if you don't use it, you lose it. I think that's the biggest part of aging and why people struggle as they get older, because they stop doing things. As I just was on my rebounder bouncing for a minute, we stop playing. We stop getting outside and doing things. Think about what kids do in school. I just passed elementary school or middle school yesterday, and the kids were outside playing. Why should this be different for adults as we get older? We lose playtime. As a kid, we have it scheduled: recess time, lunchtime, you go eat, and then you go play. And then after school, kids go play sports. Well, why is that not happening for adults? So think of meal times as move times, but also think about performance gains, not just for athletes. So when we talk about the next section, longevity, VO2 max, I want to think about your quality of life in the future, functional capacity, chronic disease risk, and estimated yearly medical expenses if you're inactive, and how that costs more. Now, this section, we are just focusing on what we identify in a PNOE metabolism test for improving performance. Again, athletes, but not necessarily athletes, right? So it's just athlete of any level. So we measure your VO2 peak. We identify your peak fat burning zone where your body burns the most fat at what heart rate. And then we understand what is your shift from fat to carbohydrate. When is this happening roughly? What heart rate ranges? So that would be your zone 2. Bottom of zone 2 is your peak fat max. Top of zone 2 is your metabolic crossover point. And then we can identify limitations. What's holding you back breathing wise? Are your mechanics poor? Are you hyperventilating? Are you not getting enough oxygen delivered to your cells to create energy? So we identify areas of opportunity and work on creating a personalized program for you based on the data collected. Now we're also looking at fuel source use. So looking at the mitochondria, when we have oxidative phosphorylation, using fatty acids is a preferred fuel source, breaking fat down, beta oxidation in the mitochondria. They go through beta oxidation, acetyl-CoA to the Krebs cycle, and into creating ATP as the end result is our energy currency. We also can use glucose, creating ATP pyruvate into the Krebs cycle as well. Now we create a lot more ATP in the mitochondria when we're oxidizing fat. We can also identify in your Pinoy metabolism test of fuel switching based on intensity, then identify what you need to do to fuel for performance, but also how to recover and how to train. So we can look at adjusting your workouts based on the data collected, really focusing on stressing. It's not a mathematical equation where we are not getting your VO2 max or your peak and then doing a percentage of that VO2 max to determine your training zones. We are identifying your 5 training zones based on your fuel source use and breathing changes. When we identify the bottom of zone 2, top of zone 1, it's your peak fat max. And we can see, do you need zone 2 training to build mitochondrial health, to build your endurance, to increase fat burning at rest? Are we increasing? Do you need more AMPK activation? Do we need to increase your fat oxidation rate? And we'll talk about Avir trim as a phytonutrients to increase AMPK. Do you need sprint training and or HIIT training? And what does that mean to increase your VO2 peak? Improve your insulin sensitivity and your fast twitch muscle fibers that we lose as we age. Do we need to activate AMPK via doing sprint interval training once to twice a week with proper recovery? And then strength training to stimulate muscle, to improve muscle, is muscle protein synthesis, supporting metabolism. We have higher metabolism, the leaner, more muscle we have better bone density and more resilience as we age. So we need to strengthen muscles via mTOR pathway, it's called, and getting increase in AMPK pathway to boost our fat oxidation. So we can look at what type of workout is best for you, at what heart rate, what are some sample workouts based on your heart rate, and interval training, if it's long, medium, or short intervals, what is best for you, and what does that recovery duration look like? How should you train for what your needs and goals and interests are? We can see in a Pinoy raw data test that this is a warm-up, this is the actual test, and then the recovery over here. The red line's increase in the heart rate. This client's fat burning was pretty good down here at this lower heart rate. And you could see the carbohydrate intake starts to go up. So this is better for metabolic crossover point. The blue line crosses over the red line, and we can see it happening, in a range, but the person's kind of good at staying there. So this is a case where I see this big point here, but they're just kind of fighting fat carbs here. So maybe they need to improve their fat burning efficiency, training more down to this higher heart rate, and then less. They'll probably do most of their training in this midway that they just didn't switch over. So that's what we're looking at. We're looking at heart rate, fuel source, breathing frequency, speed, watts, and this is why it's based on science, not math, and figuring out what fuel source is being used based on the oxygen in and carbon dioxide out. What's the best nutritional plan for you? How to improve your performance based on the data collected to build muscle, or do you need to improve mitochondria? Do we need more zone 2? So we can figure out what you need to do and then look at the lifestyle habits. Do you need some red light therapy? Would you benefit from some restructuring of your sleep routine, or maybe you need some breath work, doing some breath holds, some nasal breathing exercises, minerals as being minerals. What do we need support to make yourself train smarter and stronger, recover faster? Then we're going to look at what time should you spend in each zone each week to improve performance. We can look at, based on science, here's some areas to improve your performance. If it is creating new mitochondria, what does that look like for you each week, monthly, quarterly, and then retest to get new zones? So here's some studies for zone 2. This improved fat oxidation. HIIT training was 4 to 6 intervals of 30 seconds all out, and then 3 to 4 minutes recovery. That helped with mitochondria content. That was way back in 2006 and then 2010. Sprint interval trainings, 3 to 4 sets of 20 seconds all out with 2 to 4 minutes recovery. These all helped mitochondria biogenesis, insulin sensitivity, low training volume. So it wasn't about doing high zone 2 training. This is where we look at over the years, minimal effective dose. What is the most beneficial, more bang for your buck? And these are short, intense workouts. Get a good warm up, a warm down, but all you're doing is 20-second sprints, 2 to 4 minute recovery, 20-second sprint, to do that circuit 3 to 4 times. So, right? So you get 20, so maybe that's 20 seconds all out, and then you have 3 minutes or more. So maybe you've got, say that's 5 minutes. So that's a 15-minute workout. If you're doing 3 sets, maybe you're getting 4 in there if you're taking that full recovery or less recovery. And then you are timing your recovery is in zone 1. So if you go back to this chart, your intervals, if you're doing sprint training, this 10, 30 seconds, 20 seconds to 60s in your zone 1. So we need to identify what your zones are. All right, so stop guessing and start testing to figure out what your zones are to get a clear picture of what you need to do. Now, longevity markers, we could look at, okay, what's your biological versus chronological age? Your VO2 max, your fat burning efficiency, and metabolic rate. These 3 markers impact your biological age. So the Pinoy report will give you your chronological versus biological age chart, as you see here, based on VO2 max, fat burn, and metabolic rate. So the fat burn efficiency reduces your age. The VO2 max and metabolic increase your age. So we want to see metabolic rate, higher it is, the better, right? I said that wrong, but this looks wrong. So the biological age versus chronological age. Obviously, you want a higher VO2 max. You want to improve your fat burn efficiency and your metabolic rate. You can see on your report, your VO2 max and health prediction report. So why does VO2 max matter? If you wanted to dive into this, we can spend a little longer time on it another time, but why VO2 max matters, I think, is good to understand why there's such conversation about what is your VO2 max. It is, as Peter Attia talks a lot about, it's a marker for long-term health and performance. Why does it matter? In higher VO2 max enhances fat metabolism, improves insulin sensitivity, supports brain health, cognitive health, cardiovascular resiliency, and energy output. So it increases your lifespan and health span. Now, what do we do in Pinoy testing? We're identifying, we talked about your RMR, your VO2 peak, your fat and crossover point breathing and mitochondria efficiency. But how does that help with the longevity? So we're looking at your VO2 max as one of the markers. You can see VO2 max in this chart. Low fitness is red line, average fitness is the middle line, and high fitness is 95th percentile. So you can see the age and years on the bottom to VO2 max and how these activities rate. So ideally, I'm trying to be my best shape when I'm 70 to 80, so I can be climbing stairs. I can be walking up hills. I can be getting up and down off the ground without trouble, and traveling and doing bike trips. So really looking at that. So what Kinoe does is looking at VO2 max or your peak and tells you how well your heart, lungs, and blood vessels, mitochondria work together. So we're measuring the volume of oxygen your body's able to take in, transport into your body, into the cells, and use during exercise. So it matters because it is all-cause mortality predictor and improved cardiovascular efficiency. So predicting how your VO2 max will evolve over time can be a great picture of your length and quality of life. Another infographic, physical fitness, sedentary versus trained and healthy life years, independence versus dependence, and target prevention starting in our midlife, where we are now, and how we really want to say you're living to 100. Make sure we're doing what we can do to keep independent. So how does this relate to the mitochondria? VO2 max training supports mitochondria function, which is key to slowing aging and maintaining energy. Faster recovery, greater stress resiliency, metabolic flexibility, and fat utilization. So a strong VO2 max improves your ability to burn fat during lower intensity. Weight maintenance, blood sugar control. What does the research show? So here's some samples. Higher VO2 max is supported what we keep hearing about, lower all-cause mortality, outperforming risk factors of smoking, diabetes, heart disease, healthy aging and brain function, slower biological age, biological youthfulness, showing improved CRF can delay chronic diseases and physical decline. Here are some studies. Individuals higher VO2 max had lowest all-cause mortality. Dose dependent, the fitter you are, the longer you live. We also hear about grip strength. So it's not just heart strength, but muscle strength. We need to say, I think it's just as important. Fitness and healthy aging. Another study showed that higher midlife cardiorespiratory fitness, your VO2 max, predicted better cognitive function, lower dementia, quality of life, brain volume, hippocampus for memory, brain drive neurofactor, BDNF benefits of exercise. Another study, VO2 max and biological aging, VO2 max associated with biological age versus chronological age. Lower VO2 max appear older biologically, with those higher VO2 max maintain physiological profiles that you're more youthful. So higher VO2 max delays onset of chronic disease and disability. So summary of a higher VO2 max, lower risk of all-cause and cardiovascular mortality, reduced risk, dementia, cognitive decline, depression, metabolic flexibility, insulin, on and on and on. But the single most powerful marker of long-term health. So how do we get all this data and figure out what you need to do? To looking at what type of training you should do, nutrition program, lifestyle habits, your breath work, light therapy, supplements. This is why I'm very passionate about testing and not guessing what I should have you do to create personalized programs. So a chart that you don't have to really worry about too much, but just how we can correlate Kinoe resting metabolic rate testing with the active metabolism rate testing, with your blood chemistry panel, with the Dutch hormone panel, with a stool gut test, with organic acids, with a me-screen mitochondria test, and looking at genetics. How amazing it would be to create a health optimization plan by getting all this data together. And that's what I do. Ideally, some people might just want the Kinoe test, and I can get enough information from that data. So adjust your nutrition and fasting levels to restore AMPK and metabolic health. We can also look at how to train smarter, support the AMPK pathways to stimulate your mitochondria, fat oxidation. We want to look at metabolic blocks, inflammation. We want to balance our stress levels. So there's a lot we can look at, data collect, if we really want to go deep dive. So with the metabolism testing, if that's the only thing you want to do, we can look at how many calories you need at rest. How many calories do you think you burned with exercise and then movement throughout the day? Looking at what is your workout plan? Do you need fat burning workout per week? How many sessions? How long? When does your body switch from fat to primarily carbohydrates? And then our goal is to move that up higher. So we're learning how to train smarter, not harder, based on your own body's data, where you are today. When we get this test done, that's looking at right now, this is what's going on. So we can also look at metabolism testing if we need to improve fat metabolism. Are you burning too many carbohydrates? Do we have imbalance between the AMPK versus mTOR? Do we have a low peak VO2? Do we have more need for mitochondria? We have a high VO2, but our recovery is hard. So we're doing too much of one system and not the other. Is your metabolism too low? Do we have some thyroid issues? We have some conversion of T4 to T3, liver dysfunction, gut dysfunction. Do we have mitochondria dysfunction? How's your insulin levels? How's your stress response? Because every stress response will increase your glucose. Metabolic flexibility, if you're a sugar burner versus a fat burner, there's a lot of stuff we can get from this test if we look at it, a deep dive. Looking at your fuel source. If you're switching from fat to carb too early on, we need to do more fat burning. If you're doing too much carb burning, we want to adjust. If your metabolism's slower, we want more strength training. So there's a lot to look at. Here's another sample of someone that's not very efficient at burning fat. Their fat burning peak is way down here and their heart rate is low, and then they do well at higher. So you can tell when someone's doing a lot of training that they take a while to reach their max. They keep pushing, and then their recovery, how fast do they come back to burning any fat? So a lot of clues I'm looking at. Genetics, screen, we already went through this, but just how important it is. All right, solutions for you. How to improve the aging process, mitochondria health, labs, signs and symptoms. Excess oxidative stress is something I keep looking at too. Mitochondria biogenesis is spelt wrong. AMPK versus mTOR. Cell damage, immune activation, how we can accelerate aging with too many sources of stress. Too much, too little. The Goldilocks effect for everything. So looking at strategies, sleep hygiene, breath work, adaptogens, antioxidants, mitochondria support, and getting labs done, not once a year, but I'm doing it every 3 to 4 months. So figuring out metabolic testing, looking at functional labs, nutrition, all of this we can do. Getting the data from metabolism tests, figure out fat oxidation, figure out your exercise, lifestyle habits, breath work. How to do a metabolism test, look at figure out what's best for you. What type of red light therapy, zone 2, sleep, stress habits, longevity. So men versus women, something to dive into as we get older, middle age, and focus on what I'm doing now. So we want to look at hormones, work with the doctors, can help you with hormones, but looking at why, look at what you're doing now, what's your training, do you have too much stress, what's going on? Men versus women, women have low testosterone too. I was just listening to Peter Attia's podcast on hormones, really good one you should listen to if you're scared of hormone replacement therapy, but looking at how you should train, how to stimulate testosterone, how to stimulate muscle health. Women might need less zone 2 and more sprint interval training with proper recovery. We want to make sure we're not overtraining. Maybe we need some red light therapy. Maybe we need to get the protein to support muscle. So women, our estrogen and progesterone really drives down, but we also lose testosterone. We need to work on strategic training, intensity more so than lots of zone 2 to lose weight and figure out what we can do. So mitochondria, just to wrap it up here, mitochondria, why do they matter? We talked a little bit about this in the beginning, that every cell but red blood cell has mitochondria. As we age, the mitochondria create ATP, cellular energy. With age, efficiency drops. Increased oxidative stress leads to more inflammation, DNA damage, and faster aging. So if we use me-screen and PNOE testing, mitochondria test, we can listen to the podcast I did with Dr. Patel from UCSD talking about mitochondria function, new fascinating test. So what you can do with the data together is pretty fascinating. I'm creating protocols based on the two tests together. We're also looking at, this is number 3. Where's my 1, 2, and 3? They're backwards. So start here. Support mitochondria function, regular exercise, resistance training, intervals, stimulate mitochondria biogenesis, red light therapy, cytochrome C oxidase helps with mitochondria function, skin cellular health, energy recovery. NAD is true niagen. I just did a great video with them. Supporting mitochondria dense diet, fasting, and hormetic stress with each client's going to be different, and then figure out what you need to do. So looking at what happens as we get older, how we can improve, why we need to do this. All right, so I'm going backwards, but I just wanted to go mitochondria matter as we age on 1, 2, and 3. How to support mitochondria are here. And then I'm missing a slide there. So let's get retested every few months. Figure out what your workout should be. Do you need sunlight? Do you need sauna, HIIT training? What is the ideal day for you is what you want to do with myself or a practitioner you work with that can figure out how to be your best self. Now, Lumati's and Encinitas, California, they have light therapy, helps the mitochondria repair. They have a 5-in-1 station. I was trying to get come to our seminar, but red light therapy, hydrogen inhalation on a vibration plate, vagus nerve, that sound therapies. It's pretty fascinating. So it's called this 5-in-1 recharge station. You can look at what you need to do to improve your future self. So let me know if you want to come over and get some testing done. If you're local in San Diego, you can get lots of discounts. And then if you want more, just send me a message and we can figure out how to be your best self in the future. So let me know if you have questions on your metabolism, mitochondria, creating a personalized nutrition, exercise, and lifestyle program. All right, that's it for today. Thanks for listening, and share with someone that might be curious about how they can be their best self in the future. So let's call it the Future You program.